DarcMatter.
Good afternoon, London. I'm really happy to be here. I was a friend and advisor of our company, and we like to talk about traditional financial services, to be completely frank. We're talking about the blockchain revolution in asset management. I know we're here to talk about the innovations in technology and cryptocurrency and cryptography, but there's a tremendous amount of value that's being trapped in traditional financial services. We've seen the ups and downs and the ebbs and flows of this industry. But before we go into how we think this is going to change everything, I'd like to give a little bit of background on the industry itself. So I think everybody kind of remembers this occurrence, right? It was around right about now where Lehman collapsed. So for me, it was actually very early on in my career, probably a month in. I was across the street, and then everybody was walking around in boxes, right, with boxes during lunch. And we were like, what actually happened? And you open up Bloomberg and you realize one of the largest banks in the world has failed. They've taken these massive positions that they didn't understand the beginnings or the endings of how this actually worked, and they actually had formulas that were incorrect in how they were understanding the value at risk for the institution itself. 45% of global wealth was lost in that instant over the next 3 to 4 months. 20 million jobs were wiped out. The after effects were felt through the Eurozone crisis as it rippled kind of through the world. And then we woke up and we asked ourselves, what was wrong with this system? How can something like this occur in the very construct and architecture of trust that we built for ourselves to operate in value transference? How can Madoff happen when he was working with some of the smartest and most sophisticated people in the world, where banks were taking 9-digit exposure positions to a fund that had an account in Florida with one associate? How are these things occurring in asset management and in financial services where people don't understand the fact that the lack of transparency causes massive moral hazard, and all of that value stays trapped because the participants don't understand, nor do they have the say or the leeway to actually be able to leverage that architecture. So let's talk about what it really means in investments. If you understood what a private investment, what an asset investment was, very early on in Apple, you'd be very rich. Very early on in Microsoft, you'd be very rich. Everything that we think and take for granted today, you'd be very, very wealthy. But how come it was restricted to a very finite few? How come there was only 3 or 4 people that had access to these types of investments in the beginning? There are 2 things that actually occurred. One is the state of financial services regulation. Private investments were considered too risky for the regular person, so it was only seconded into the wealthy universe. Secondly, what ended up happening because of that is that the compliance cost of asset management started skyrocketing over the same period of time. If you actually look at the graph for the cost of compliance, it actually looks pretty similar, which means your accessibility gets worse and worse over time, and your ability to protect and preserve your wealth gets worse over time. So here's the current state of the investment market as we view it in our company today. There's distribution of traditional investments. We use Fidelity, Schwab, all these online accounts, FinTech Solutions, Acorn. You can buy stocks online. That's great, but that's because it's supposed to cost you 0 to buy stocks at this current point. There's alternative investments, which is where we're focused at DarcMatter, which is everything but cash, stocks, and bonds. So what is there besides cash, stocks, and bonds? And does everybody understand that there's a massive multi-trillion-dollar industry that's being trapped and not being unlocked because of the lack of innovation, because of the lack of transparency? And then we kind of put venture investments, which is also cryptocurrency, blockchain companies, startups, into a separate bucket. High risk, high return, but that means it also should protect its investors as well. So how can we accomplish that going forward? If you're thinking about asset management today, there's about 71.4 trillion. It's a bit dated. I'd say we're closer to 80, 85 trillion today. But investor wealth is anticipated to grow to $224 trillion in the next 2 years. So what does that mean for the rest of the world? It means the financial services industry is woefully under-equipped to deal with what's actually happening, right? Actual value generation, population explosion, the need for value transference, the need for transparency, the need for wealth preservation, security, and transparency at the same time is exploding all around the world, through Asia, through Europe, not really in the United States to be completely frank, but everywhere around the world it's changing, but nothing's actually happening. I know everyone, we always talk about it in rooms like this, right? The excitement of blockchain, how it's going to change the world. Nobody knows what blockchain is yet. Financial services doesn't care. They don't know yet. We still talk to people and they ask us, oh, that scam thing that I read about on the internet. You know, oh, can you send me one of those? Like, maybe I'll look into it. Maybe I'll see what it is. There's a huge disconnect between what the work that we're doing in innovation here and what's actually happening in the real industry, and we need to bring that to bear. But that means we have to understand the state of the current industry right now. The lack of transparency, I can't say that enough. I just need to beat it home, right? You don't really understand what's actually happening. Yeah, it's a public stock, it's on exchanges, it's S1, SEC said it's okay. You've never actually read one before. You've never even actually seen the financial positions before. You just bought it because somebody told you to buy it. And there's a complexity in global regulations that's increasing over time. Europe has that problem too. Yes, protect investors. But now you're increasing the cost for people to access these investment opportunities. So that means it gets harder and harder to do what we need to do. And there's conflicted intermediaries. There's a lot of intermediaries in our industry today. There's a lot of intermediaries in financial services. What incentive do I have to sell you the best possible product that's good for you? What incentive do I have to act in a purely rational manner to ensure that your wealth is protected? Absolutely none. Because we regulated people, not an industry. And what ends up happening because of that? All of the compliance gets more and more expensive. All of the compliance. The rough estimate right now is that Wall Street is paying 60% of its revenues into compliance costs. JP Morgan in 2016 had a $9 billion legal budget just for regulatory filings because they knew they were going to get hell rained on them that year. So they budgeted $9 billion. That's pre-tax money. That's revenue money they were budgeting to protect themselves as an institution, as a whole industry. It's amazing stuff. Where's that $9 billion going for their clients? Yeah, it's for the institution itself. So what are we doing at our company right now to try to change this? We've been around for about 4 years. We're the world's award-winning platform that's connecting investors and asset managers all around the world. Quite frankly, there are certain things we can't do with current technology solutions. It's just not scalable. It doesn't work. I can't give a person access to $5 investment into a Blackstone fund right now. It's impossible. You can't do it with current technology. But there are things that we can do with blockchain technology, with an ecosystem, without a centralized marketplace that we can't do today. So here are the solutions that we've provided so far as a fintech platform. We automate all the KYC, AML, workflow, compliance, global distribution. We're in over 62 countries. Investors from 62 countries are working with us. But we need to manually upgrade our software that it works in certain jurisdictions, in certain languages, in certain filing requirements. We have to do that, but that doesn't scale. Compliance costs for us increase as well. But what if we could change that? Where the folks that were actually distributing their products, where the folks that were actually investing are able to take part in that ecosystem itself. Provide the compliance solution, provide the security, provide the transparency, but also protect privacy of information at the same time. We're working with about 150 global fund opportunities. With the blockchain solution, we think we can get to 1,000 in less than 6 months. Why is that? We'll talk about why that is. So the blockchain community provides us a solution where you as an investor or you as an asset manager can actually provide a part of the solution that we're providing as a solution today. We can't make every smart contract. It's impossible. We can't provide every compliance solution. There is no institution in the world that can provide that. But the folks that are on the ground in that ecosystem, in that jurisdiction, are able to provide us with a better solution than we can provide ourselves. And we can compensate them for that in a blockchain ecosystem. You can invest using the blockchain. You can protect your own transparency using the blockchain. You can ensure that it's always accessible, immutable, but you can also ensure that it's private. You can ensure that there's an audit trail that's complete all the time. That even regulators, I know we all hate regulations, but even regulators can step in and say, well, you guys are behaving in the right fashion because I can keep track of that very, very easily. I don't have to go through 30,000 pages of documents to figure out when you said this sentence to this investor because they're very upset about it. I don't need to do that. I can ask, when was this, what time, what date, what second was it? And then we can figure that out together. We can decrease compliance costs and at the same time increase savings for all of the investors involved. Fraud and error. I talked about Madoff. Madoff is physically impossible. Ponzi schemes are physically impossible. Although we've seen some issues in the blockchain ecosystem, it's physically impossible through a blockchain solution that's required for reporting. How can you say something that is not? How can you represent positions that don't exist? It doesn't work in the future, and that's a huge problem that financial services faces today. And one of the things that we're most excited about is democratizing access. It's access to investment opportunities all around the world in a safe and responsible way. I'll be the first one to admit that not all investments are right for every kind of investor. That's the whole point. The whole point is that we have to understand which products are connected to which investors, and that we have no conflict in the guys that are selling it, the guys that are compensated for it. We always need experts. We don't need any more salespeople in financial services. And we need to democratize access all around the world so that it's as easy for somebody in London to invest into an opportunity as it is from New York, or as it is from Japan, or wherever you want to invest. So this is our story, and we hope that you'll join our journey. Visit our platform, DarcMatter.com, see what we're working on right now, and see how you can help us contribute and grow into the ecosystem that we want to become in the future, more than we are today. This is our team. We come from a very diverse background: technology, marketing, operations, financial services. You need to be in it to know it. So we've done it. Give us a call, give us a ring, give us an email if you want to join the vision and the mission, or if you have any questions. Thank you very much.
All right, Sage, DarcMatter. Thank you very much. Let's bring up Roger from